after a long span of duration, we finally get a sequel to Gladiator. I didn't think we ever would get a sequel to Gladiator 2.
I didn't think we'd get it in this version. I was really expecting that Maximus fighting through time
We'll get
screenplay.
we'll get into more of it. So let's talk about Gladiator 2. Is it a worthy sequel?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
You already know it. I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Before we begin the show, I just want to give a shout out. I participated in a documentary for Fox 9 News here in Minneapolis, St. Paul called No Stars, a documentary about the North Star, a hockey team leaving for Texas in 1993. I had an opportunity to be interviewed, as well as some of my sketches were in the video. So if you have a find, you can find it on YouTube. It's called No Stars. Thanks for if you get an opportunity to watch it. But continue on. We got to see Gladiator 2. Of course, this is kind of a screener I take my dad to see. Yeah.
In the years since the original film, the now adult Lucius Verus is living in Numidia under a false name to protect his identity. When his home and life are destroyed by the Roman army led by Marcus Acacius, Lucius is taken into slavery where he fights as a gladiator for Macrinus, a former slave turned politician vying for control of Rome. Macrinus promises Lucius a chance to battle Acacius and exact his vengeance as long as he keeps fighting for him.
So right off the bat, I will say, yeah, it's a worthy sequel. It's a solid. I mean, if you really enjoy Gladiator, I think you're going to enjoy Gladiator 2. Yeah, it even harkens back some of the old flashback sequence of Gladiator.
Well, the only problem with it, in terms of like harkening back and feeling like that,
Here we go.
is 24 years of time. Because I do believe that people have that kind
and the
of
movie
idea.
is 15.
Yeah. But what we have is a movie that I think is worthy as a sequel. Very good movie.
Yeah.
It's just if you try to make that comparison of you will think this is as good as the first Gladiator. I do think there are people that hold that film in such a high regard that nothing can reach it. What I appreciate most about this one is it actually felt kind of like an echo. You know, there's that line of dialogue that Maximus says, "What we do in life echoes through eternity." This film felt kind of like an echo.
Kind of the theme of it. That there's always what happened 15 years ago is prevalent today.
Yeah.
You can never get rid of it. If you're looking for historical accuracy, guess what? Not even Gladiator did that. So there's a lot of historical accuracies that people are blasting. Obviously, it was a assault to people when Ridley Scott did Napoleon. Ridley Scott doesn't care about historical accuracy in his movies.
No,
he's
Ben Affleck and Matt Damon in The Last Duel would like to speak.
Right. So I get it. Yes, there was no real newspapers in Rome at the time. They have some kind of this newspaper. It's kind of comical, but there are sharks in the pool and all that stuff. But I understand it's not so much a Roman story. It's almost a story of things in the past. You said echo. The remnants, the aftershock, still play prevalent to the dynamics of people today. What the story took place.
Well, because the beginning of the film, the first half hour, 40 minutes, plays out very similarly to the point where I was like, "Ooh, we're gonna do
like a carbon copy."
And then I can't exactly tell you at what point in the film it happens, but something near the end of that first act, there's a small change, and it's because they reference Maximus. Like they bring him up as this like person they all look to now, years later. Yeah. And from that moment on, the very memory of what he did has now echoed in a way where they are taking a different path. They are changing their destiny based on what he did in the first film, and that's what I think is so powerful about it.
What can I take away is really great production design.
Mm-hmm.
Really impressed. Obviously, I was impressed with it with Napoleon. For all its flaws, but great production design. A lot of the in-studio like house built, so you don't see a ceiling. You won't see a ceiling, but also very confined spaces. A lot of these long arched stairwells, it feels confined space. Mm-hmm. So I obviously they built in studio, but I was really impressed with this production design. We can probably even talk a little bit maybe costuming.
Yeah, costuming is great. Production design is solid. I think it's the kind of movie that they smartly made choices to kind of flip the script on some of the battle scenes. Like I love that the first fight gladiatorial scene is two guys in like a luncheon. Like they bring in Lucius and he fights that guy in the middle of like a lunch scene. Yeah. And it's like it's not grandiose, it's not spectacular. I will say that some of the CG in certain places doesn't look nearly as polished as it does in the first film, which is kind of wild when you consider the time difference. Yeah. Specifically, there's a scene where a bunch of monkeys are in a battle that It's really rough looking.
That's the big minus I would take away. It's like, this looks cartoonish.
It's got a bit of a rushed feeling to the special effects.
Yeah, which is really weird. I would just cut it.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife actually got up, went to the bathroom during that, came back, and nothing changed. So she didn't have to see the monkey scene, and we got to move on from it.
There was some rumblings about some of that made this possibly be a Best Picture nomination. I don't see it. I see this technical award nominations, kind of like the same thing that transpired with Napoleon, probably with this one with Ridley Scott also.
Yeah, I think it's a case where it's a technically very well-made movie, but people will kind of come away from it, I think, unfortunately, comparing it to the first film. I think that happens, because I watched the first film right before going to this one again. I kind of revisited it earlier in the day, and coming out of that one, I was like, yeah, it's not as good, but that doesn't mean it's bad. No. And I think we have to get past that as a society, is that every sequel needs to be better than the first one. I think it's crazy. As long as it's a good movie, I'm totally happy.
The script's a little junior high-ish, but so is Gladiator. That's very much like a pro wrestling kind of a script, kind of a thing. Yeah. Denzel Washington is really just the glue of it all. Really. Yeah.
It's a shame I continually doubt Denzel Washington. I don't mean that in a bad way, but like when he was cast in this movie and like they kind of described his character, I was like, okay, so he's kind of like a supporting character. No, he might be the protagonist of the film. I mean, he might have more screen time than Lucius does. I think he's a more interesting character. You know, the more I watched,
I understand his background.
Yes, exactly, and I think Lucius, for example, he's not written very interestingly. I think Paul Mescal's doing what he can with the role, but I'm far more interested in Macrinus. I'm far more interested in Marcus Acacius, Pedro Pascal's character, on what's going on in the underground when you get Connie Nielsen returning and Derek Jacobi. Like, I'm more interested in those parts of the story than I am with Lucius, and it's just kind of a fault on like the writing doesn't make him that interesting. He's kind of
you have this harken of this almost I'm Spartacus kind of a thing with the gladiators and like, who are you? I don't know.
Yeah.
But right, it's a solid movie. I don't know, it reaches the epsilon of great. I love the technical aspects of it. There's the performances of it, but I think just like my criticism of Napoleon, I think the script should have been fleshed out a little bit more.
Coincidence that it's the same screenwriter as Napoleon.
And a lot of the action sequences kind of seem a little cartoonish. Even with, oh my god, the shark, and you get the screams, like it feels like almost a comedy bit almost sometimes.
I think that's where the nails on the head with that is the screenplay. I think David Scarpa is very much more of a blunt force screenwriter. And I think he struggles with tone. Because some of the things, too, there's a few things in the Napoleon film that we talked about where they were kind of sillier, I think, than they were intended to be. Because Napoleon is inherently a very odd and unusual man.
Even his death was silly.
And this film kind of had that with Fred Hetchinger's character, Emperor Caracalla, who his mind has been riddled with syphilis. And he's kind of becoming more and more unhinged as the film goes on. I felt like they didn't really capture the way that character would be, and he kind of stands out as a really kind of goofy character in the final narrative. I mean, I agree with his choice of leadership, Donda's 2028, but I just, he's missing that
crucial element. I think a tone of just, if you want to do an action flick of just popcorny, fine, but it's also, there's some serious tone elements of really foreboding aspects to it. So I think it's a balance that didn't get flushed out very well. You want to be credited to take it like a serious drama, then that's just not it.
I believe when we see the eventual extended cut, because Ridley Scott only does that. I think this will be a case where the extended cut is better, because I think Ridley Scott's one of those few filmmakers, like every one of his films has an extended version. Not all of them are great, but the ones that I think there's like half that get better with that extended cut and half that get worse. I think this is a case where hopefully we'll see some more fleshing out in those elements of just some of the other characters in the film, because I was taken with the Macrinus and the Acacius character. One person who stood out, and I don't know the actor's name, but he played the doctor, the Gladiator doctor. I'm almost certain that would have had to have been Djimon Hounsou's character, because he left the project. He couldn't finish filming it, or he couldn't film the project when he was cast to return. I think he was going to play the doctor character, because he said he used to be a gladiator and he retired from fighting, and I feel like that would have been a logical thing for Hounsou's character to do after the events of the original film. But I really like the actor that they picked for the role, that new version of the character that they've crafted. I really like what they did with him.
So look out for some technical aspects if you like to watch filmmaking for like production design and action sequence. it's good for you. If you're looking for a story that's going to be a memorable thing, you're missing out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's got some rouse to it. I think
very rough.
It doesn't have those battle sequences. I mean, Gladiator was kind of an epic war film for the first third of it. That first film.
Yeah, when they're in Germania.
Yeah, and so coming back to this one, it's a little bit more
compact.
in.
Yeah, even the set design's a little more compressed.
Yeah, it almost becomes shocking when we get to that arena, because then we're like, oh god, I don't know where to like back into.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the twist that they made on the gladiatorial arena. I like the fight scenes about it. You're right, the historical accuracy's not there, but I've said it once, I'll say it again. I don't need historical accuracy in my movies. I need historical accuracy in my documentaries and my books.
Okay. Keep the conversation going. Have you seen Gladiator 2? Put a comment down below. Hit the like and subscribe button. Tell your friends about the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And let us know, did you think it was as good or not as good or better? Maybe you're one of the people that just wasn't huge on the first Gladiator, and this has finally turned you around. We'd love to hear about it. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Kyle and Nick on Film, and we will see you next week.